Hi guys, I just wanted to do a little installation video for the Velit gasoline heater. And this is going to be in a RAM ProMaster. I just got this one. I installed one yesterday as well, so I know a little bit more about what I'm doing, so I can do a nice little video here. So in the package we have all of the required components that you'll need to install the heater. So you have exhaust hose, and then inside here is intake hose, and then the intake air filter, a bag of fuel line components, and this one actually comes with the fuel tap for the ProMaster, and I believe the Sprinter and Transit. I'm not sure about the other ones. I'm only concerned with the ProMaster one, which it has. And then there's also in here a fuel pump electrical connector as well, which allows you to feed the wire through the floor of your van or vehicle easier. Another bag of components. These are all the clips and hose clamps, the rubber gasket for the bottom of your heater. There is a little muffler here. It says it's optional, and this must be installed in between the exhaust hose. So you have to cut the exhaust hose in half and then install the muffler somewhere in between. As always, I don't know if you guys have installed Webasto or Chinese diesel heaters before, but the exhaust needs to be slanted down. There's actually a drain hole on the muffler as well, and that needs to be in the down direction to let any excess liquid flow out of there. Fuel pump, the Bluetooth thermostat, heater exhaust vent, metal plate, and then the actual heater itself. I'm going to be installing the heater in the front of the van near the front step, and I'll show you that in a second. So here's the heater where it's going to be placed. I marked the bottom and traced it out with a plate that was provided. And it's a little tricky to find a location for the heater to go properly. There's lots of support beams and things you don't want to have hit on the bottom of the van whenever you're doing your holes through the van. So this is a pretty good spot. I'll show you on the bottom of the van later exactly why we chose there. But we're basically going to have a front step that's going to cover this completely, and it'll have the exhaust come out here, and there'll be a port on the other side for the intake to have sufficient airflow for the heater as well. So here's the location for the heater. The plate's going to fit on there like that. I'm going to use a 3-inch, I believe, 3.5-inch hole saw. It's going to cut out a hole approximately right there, and that'll be enough to have access to all of the intake exhaust and mounting points and fuel line for the heater. And I'm going to cut that hole right now and I'll show you. So here's the hole where the heater is going to go. Plate's going to go over it like that. I know there's some gaps around the plate itself. We're going to put some foam stripping on the outside of this and create a gasket to seal it against the floor. And so whenever it gets tightened down to the floor, that foam will compress and seal off any gaps. And now I'm going to go get some Rust-Oleum paint and clean up this edge and get it ready to install. So here's everything that you get with the heater. The main heater unit itself, a rubber gasket goes on the bottom of the heater, 2 hose clamps. This is for the exhaust hose, the exhaust hose outlet, fuel pump, hose clamps, They only give you 2 of these. We're gonna need more of them to attach the exhaust and the intake hose to the bottom of the van. Ratcheting hose clamps. These are for the fuel line. So the fuel line actually goes inside of these rubber sleeves, the nylon fuel line, and then you put the hose clamp on top of that to seal it. The intake air hose, the air intake filter, the electrical connection for the fuel pump, and the wires actually come ready to go inside of it, so you can feed this through the bottom of your van and then you can attach it to this. You don't have to drill a giant hole. In the actual plate, this little cutout right here is actually meant to have the fuel line wires fit through it. And if you see, when I attach it to here, it's actually outside of the heater unit itself, so it doesn't get squished in between, so you don't have to worry about pinching the wires. You have the fuel filter. There's a little arrow showing the direction. I actually put a Sharpie on it to see it better because it's kind of hard to see. The muffler, the exhaust pipe, and it comes with a fuel tap. We're not going to be using that. We're going to use the actual auxiliary port fuel filter for the ProMaster. This is the one we're going to be using. It's kind of green inside. This is the other one it comes with. We're going to not use that one. And finally, the thermostat Bluetooth unit. Let's get the heater fitted up and I'll show you how we're going to install it. So here are the connections on the bottom of the heater. First we attach these 4 studs. Take a nut off so you can see. So you screw 4 studs into the heater themselves, then you attach the rubber gasket over that, and then the metal plate, and now we're going to thread on the nuts. We're going to tighten those up, and then we're going to install the fuel line adapters. Install a fuel line adapter, the hose clamp. We're going to install the air intake and the exhaust. We're going to go tighten those up right now. So here are the connections all tightened and fastened to the bottom of the heater. These nuts are a 10 mil, and then the hose clamp for both the fuel line adapter and the exhaust and intake are a 7 millimeter socket size. So the heater is almost ready to drop through the hole. I fished the fuel pump electrical cable through, and these actually, I didn't mention earlier, but the polarity of the connections don't matter, so they can go in either hole. And then I fitted up the fuel pump adapter. So this is the auxiliary port for the fuel tap, the rubber fitting, fuel filter, and then another rubber fitting, and then the fuel line. It's going to go inside of there with one more clamp, and we're going to run that to the fuel pump under the van. To access the fuel port, it's right next to the driver's side seat. It's kind of hard to do with one hand. There we go. So this plastic plate removes, and then there are 3 screws you have to remove, and I'll show you in a second what's underneath there. So now that the plate is removed, we're gonna take this blue cap off. You pinch these 2 little buttons on the bottom and it slides off, and then that's gonna be our port we're gonna use for our fuel tap. So next step, we're going to take this nylon fuel line and we're going to slide it on the left side of the fuel port, and it'll come out down below the van, and then we're going to attach it to our fuel auxiliary tap and the fuel filter. And then we're gonna go feed this under the van. And so here's that fuel line. And I have some split loom that we're going to use to protect the fuel line and get everything hooked up. So the next step is to mount the fuel pump. The fuel flows from this side to this side, and it needs to be in an upward direction. I think around 25 degrees. It's somewhere between 15 and 40 if I remember correctly, but around 25 degrees. And there's that, and so I'm going to attach the fuel line to that side, and then we're going to drop the heater in, and then we're going to run the fuel line from the heater and attach it to this side. So now we're going to fasten the heater to the floor, and I've actually used this fire barrier sealant around the entire perimeter of the plate to create an airtight seal. So it'll cover, it's pretty flat, there's a couple little gaps, but for the most part it's pretty flat. I just want to make sure that it's nice and sealed around the bottom there. We don't want any gases from the outside coming into the van. So we'll do that, fasten it down. I'm going to use some self-tapping screws and get it all secured. So here's the bottom of the heater. Everything is hooked up now. So you have your exhaust, intake, this is the fuel line. The exhaust, or the intake filter is over here, and it's kind of blocked by the fuel tank, the van's fuel tank, and the exhaust comes and is mounted right here, which is right next to the side of the van. And the fuel pump is right there. Still have to trim a couple zip ties, get everything tidied up, but it's pretty much 99% installed. So the heater is all installed. I ran a test run on it and everything's working fine. Just wanted to show you the Bluetooth controller. Sorry for the screen flashing, the LED lines up with the shutter on the video. So there's two modes. There's a thermostat mode, and you can switch the little dial to change the set temperature, and then if you push the button again, there's a manual mode. And if you have to push the center button for 2 seconds to actually start the heater in either mode. There's an auto start time, an auto run time, and then you can set the date of the actual or the time of the actual heater controller. And there's a cleaning mode. You can prime the fuel pump. My run was only like 4 feet long, so I didn't actually have to prime it. And then back to the main menu there. And then so you hold it for 2 seconds, it'll automatically start, and you can go through and you can set up all the different parameters on there.